ADCC is perhaps the most prestigious grappling competition on the planet outside of the Olympics. In some ways, it's more important than the Olympics because it's not plagued by corruption and is a compilation of all wrestling styles rather than a standard fixed rule set. However, of all Olympic wrestlers, Karelin's Greco-Roman record is like nothing of this world. He has 887 wins and only 2 losses. Perhaps his most shocking loss came in the final match of his career at the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games. Up until this point, Karelin had only won gold medals, including 3 Olympic, 9 World, 2 World Cups and 12 European golds. The loss at the Olympic Games against Rulon Gardner is not particularly controversial, but more shocking. For the said Olympic Games, the rules were slightly different. Once you had a secured grip around your opponent's back with your hands connected, releasing and adjusting the grip would give 1 point to your opponent in an attempt to stop inactivity. As Gardner was so broad-shouldered, Karelin could not keep his grip well and subsequently lost the match when he was not able to recover the point. Even so, perhaps almost as equally impressive as his wrestling record are his academic achievements. Karelin holds a habilitation in how to defend a suplex. This is the highest honour of degrees in Europe and is the level above PhD thesis on the subject. By just observing his movements, you can clearly see his technique is outstanding. He can penetration step the entire length of a mat and shoulder walk backwards with extreme ease for a man that is such a giant. Of course, Karelin does not have any formal submission grappling training that we know of, but he is an 887-2 Greco-Roman Olympic champion. Greco-Roman wrestling was probably more competitive than ADCC at the time when Karelin competed, as BJJ was relatively unknown on a worldwide scale. For example, if we were to give Karelin 1 year of training with John Danaher and then compare Karelin to Nick Rodriguez at ADCC 2019, then there would be some vague similarities. Neither would have much submission grappling experience, with both being under 3 years, but both would have wrestled at competitive tournaments. Also, with no disrespect to Nick Rodriguez, Karelin has wrestled at a much higher level. Rodriguez was able to bring home a silver medal, with his opponents struggling to take him down. Granted, he did not take down his opponents and positionally dominate them, but you wouldn't expect Karelin to do this either, as Greco-Roman ground game is extremely different from BJJ. On the other hand, freestyle wrestling is much more suited to ADCC rules than Greco-Roman, as there are no holds below the waist and you are not allowed to leg trip. In summary, the wrestling Karelin had trained for was purely upper body throws from a stand-up position with no submission holds. The case against Karelin for doing well at an ADCC event would have 2 fairly major points. First of all, is the modern grappling game contains a lot of leg locks. Although Sambo is popular in Russia, if Karelin was not well versed in this area, it could easily be his downfall. Of course, size and strength matters, but this is somewhat mitigated by heel hooks. The final point for the case against Karelin would be his opponents choosing to pull guard. By giving up minor takedowns before points are applied, grapplers can effectively pull guard, albeit in an unconventional way. There is no doubt that Karelin would be a menace from top position, but with submission holds and leg entries being somewhat common, he would not be as well versed in this area when compared to stand-up grappling. In favour of Karelin, there have been similar situations before, such as ex-wrestler Mark Kerr fighting in ADCC. Kerr was a D1 wrestler who had defeated Randy Couture and was the Pride and UFC champion. Kerr went on to win 3 gold medals at ADCC and has beaten the likes of Ricardo Almeida and Mario Sperry. He retired with an ADCC record of 13-1. This shows the potential for a wrestler like Karelin in a global grappling competition. In summary, there should be no doubt in your mind that Karelin would have been an ADCC champion if he had trained submission grappling. His movement, technique and strength are unparalleled for a man of his size. Karelin was dominating the Greco-Roman wrestling scene for almost 2 decades and won gold medals whilst having broken ribs. If we are to compare Karelin to former ADCC champion Orlando Sanchez in terms of athleticism, it isn't even close. This is no disrespect to Sanchez, who moved very well for a big man, but when we think about comparing the two athletically, there is no comparison. It's somewhat of a shame to think that such a talent like Karelin never tried his hand at submission grappling, and we will never truly know what he could have achieved within the sport.